good afternoon, good evening, everyone, to a brand new edition of Vestiges After Dark. This is Bishop Brian Willett coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. On this April 5th, 2019, we've got a great show for you tonight. My very special friend and our special guest and fellow Ghost Adventures guest star Patti Negri joins us to talk about witchcraft, the metaphysical, the paranormal, and answer any of your questions. She's in the chat room right now. So go ahead, start asking your questions. Sister Maximilian is here. Sister Mary Joan is here. They'll be checking the chat room as well so we don't miss any of your questions. And it's going to be a good 2 hours. Don't go away. Everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening as we talk about these topics that all of you out there on Twitter inspire. You know, I get so many questions all the time. Anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that there's questions coming in almost 24/7. I can't even get to them all most of the time anymore. But sometimes people ask me questions that are just far beyond the scope of what Twitter allows, and so this show is designed to give you the means to ask those questions but get a complete answer. But every now and then, you know, Vestiges After Dark was really set up to be entertainment, as a way for you to talk about these things that everybody who follows me on Twitter is interested in, and that's, of course, the paranormal. And so this is an opportunity for you to enter into dialogue with some of the most brilliant minds out there in the field, and my good friend Patti Negri definitely falls into that category. So without any further hesitation, let's go ahead and bring everybody on. So Sister Mary Joan, are you here tonight?
I am. Good evening, everyone.
Awesome. And Sister Maximilian?
Hello.
Glad that you're there. You're in the chat room too, I see. And of course, special guest Patti Negri. How are you doing tonight, Patti?
I am excellent. I am so happy to be here. I've been excited all day.
Yeah, this is really, it's our pleasure. It's really our honor to have you on the show. You know, it is wonderful. Every opportunity that we get to interact, which isn't very often, but, you know, ever since Ghost Adventures Live, you know, sitting around at the Golden Nuggets Chinese restaurant eating duck late at night. I mean, that was just fantastic, wasn't it?
It was the best. It was the best. We need a reunion just of that.
We do.
It was a great time.
I want to go.
Well,
of course.
You can come. Well,
we'll all get in trouble.
Yeah.
We would. We get a lot in trouble, but you know, this show it can be a little bit of that, you know, without of course the great Chinese food, but you know, we can dream about that. But Patti, you know, let's start off talking about the subject that I think is really fundamental to what you do and the role that you play. And of course, anybody that is a big fan of Ghost Adventures has seen your numerous episodes and the participation that, or I guess the particular talents, I should say, that you bring to the show, in much the same way that my appearances have, and focused on what I do. But, you know, this show started out as Vestiges of Christianity. That's its sister show. And, you know, I was doing this long before I was ever on Ghost Adventures, or as well known as I am now, because of it. And a lot of subsequently very conventional-minded Christians, very traditional-minded Christians, listen to me and this show because they sort of followed me on the Vestiges of Christianity show. And I know that every now and then the subject of witchcraft comes up, and they become completely scandalized by my positive viewpoint of it. I am not the kind of Christian that talks negatively about it. I don't condemn it. I don't condemn those who are involved in it. And I even see some great spiritual value there, and how it has enriched the lives of so many people. But for so many conventionally minded Christians, of which I admittedly am not a part, they see it as some type of allegiance to the devil. They feel that it has something to do with the darkness, that it is ultimately demonic. And I don't think they believe me when I say that nothing further could be from the truth in that statement. So maybe if they hear it from you, somebody who practices this, who understands the authenticity of it, because you are definitely one of the most authentic people I have ever met involved in witchcraft. A lot of people get involved in witchcraft because they see it as cool, or they're looking for some kind of alternative religion because the conventional ones, don't jive, or maybe it's just some kind of social reaction. They want to rebel. I don't know. And I know a lot of people get into it for the wrong reasons. But, there are those who are born into it. There are those who are naturally inclined. And this is the facilitation of their spirituality, and I have seen that in you, and that's the type of witchcraft that I'm talking about when I talk positively about it. So I'd like for you maybe to start off just talking about your work, what you do, and maybe rest everybody's mind that you do not worship the devil.
Absolutely. I do not worship the devil. I do not eat babies. I don't. Far, far from the truth, actually. No, I was just born this way. It's hereditary witch. It's a gift. It's a God-given gift. There is nothing in my belief system that would even, to my knowledge, conflict with me, with your belief system or anybody else's. It's a way of being. Witchcraft means a lot of things to a lot of people, which to say you're a witch can be, it's my religion. I am Wiccan, or I'm a ceremonialist, or I am a chaos magician. I'm a good old hedge witch. I'm whatever. It could be sort of your belief system. But the way I actually do it, to me, it is my way of being. It's a taking action. I believe, again, God-given right that we can take action into our own hands. Actually, just like you do as a priest, using God-given attributes. I knew when I was, besides when I was 3 or 4, I knew that the imaginary friends little kids had weren't all imaginary. They're real beings and entities that I could talk to and communicate with and get real and great information. I would find myself in my little suburban backyard kind of picking rosemary and knowing what to do with it, picking some clove and knowing it would help my mom's toothache. I was a little bitty thing and just knowing what to do with things. So it's just in my blood. It's this knowledge in my blood. I have, studied it my entire life since then, since it's like, well, you've got it, figure out what it is and what to do with it. But I have always and only worked in the light. I mean, the darkest stuff I ever get too close to a demon is when I go do ghost adventures. I'm just like that because I don't. I believe that we create the world we live in. So people who see witches and cursing and dark magic and stuff, it's like, to do that, right or wrong, you would have to live in that world. If you send a curse on somebody, you have to live in a world of curses. Why would anybody do that? Why not send love to somebody and live in a world of love?
Right.
So to call myself a witch means I'm going to go out into the garden and pick some weird herbs and yes, do a working and work with energy to cause shift. I do everything in integrity, everything virtuous, and I don't do anything without anybody's permission as far as witchcraft at all. Even healings, unless it's to pray for someone's healing. I will pray for someone's healing, but I will not send that energy there unless it's very generic and with their permission.
Right.
Because again, I'm not God. I'm this very powerful human because every one of us is.
Yep.
So it's go on.
Do you find that when you do this work, because it is a lot like what we do as well, like you really hit the nail on the head. There's not a lot of difference between, the kind of things or the clients that we help and the ways that we help them and sort of the methods of protocol that we follow. Very similar to what you just described there. It's not. I would even go as far as to say is that we cannot help them unless they have given their volition over to the process. And we get that a lot. We get a lot of people who come for help expecting some type of magical solution, which I know that even in witchcraft, even though we're talking about magic in more of an occult sense, they want more of a fairy princess kind of magic where, it just sort of, in the Disney-esque fashion, solves the problem overnight. And I'm sure you have experienced this too, where people, are not prepared for the effort and not prepared for the discipline that is sometimes required in order to resolve a demonic attachment, or maybe let's just say a dark attachment, because most of the time when people are referring to a demonic attachment, we're not talking about things in the Judeo-Christian fallen angel sense. Most of the time these are going to be elementals, which I know that you're very familiar with in the work that you do, or wrathful spirits, just people that have died that have a vendetta, and that vendetta continues on. So would you say that that's true? Would you say that in a lot of cases your clients are not prepared to put the amount of effort in that's required to effectuate their own solution, that sometimes they come to you hoping that you're going to just wave your magic wand and it all goes away overnight?
Yes, and you're right. Just like you can't. Because what I do, again, in studying religion and philosophy and metaphysics, and like you very much my whole life, what I see is the through line in most of them, and I take it down to energy because I see energy. So some of the words may change. To me, it's almost like a template. You're taking this truth, this basic elemental truth, religious truth, this truth, and then what words you're using is your template. But I take it all back down to energy, and almost how I always work is to create something, you need mind, body, spirit connection. We know that because 200,000 books are written, mind, body, spirit. The spiritual section, the self-help section, the psychology section, because we know that without the mind part, we'll never surpass our own belief system. It's going to be easy, it's going to be hard. This demon can be out of me or it can't. Our head is part of it. The psychology is legitimate in 1/3. We understand that. Body, we understand that. Taking action, we have to. It's like, I'm going to eat healthy, so I won't go to the fast food restaurant every day. We understand that. But the third part, body, mind, and spirit, it's the spirit that gets lost. And that's the part that can be done by working with you, by going to church, by prayer, or New Age. It could be vision boards. It could be affirmations. It can be spell working and ritual in your form or mine, which are extraordinarily similar, by the way.
Oh, yes.
So again, like, okay, yeah, we have that same sensor. Oh, yeah, we use that frankincense. It's the same. So again, if of the body, mind, spirit thing, if you have 1 out of 3, that's wishful thinking. I wish someone would come clear this energy out of my house. 2 out of 3 can be hit or miss. 3 out of 3 is always a home run to me. So if I am working with somebody, whether, wanting to quit smoking or, again, get an attachment or an entity, or I do a lot of house clearings and space clearings and office clearings. Because, as you know, energy gets bundled up. It's not always a ghost or a spirit or an elemental. Sometimes it's just the energy of what's going on. So they do it with me. I literally hand them a broom, a literal broom. We are sweeping this out. Here, you work with this incense. You work with this drum. You work with this. I need your passion within this. Just me doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really it's like a battery. I like to describe it in those terms, where you have, the positive and negative heads need to be connected in order for the charge to take place. And we're only one part of that charge. The client is the other half of that equation, and if they're not connecting with the process, then they don't heal, and then they, very often, I don't know if you experience this, but in our work, they blame us when it doesn't pan out the way
Right.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, did you listen? Did you do this? Sister Mary Jones is the one that does most of the follow-up, and so, she's already got the whole thing memorized by now where, well, did you do the first thing the bishop said? No? Okay, well, did you do that one at least? No, I didn't do that one either. And then they wonder why it didn't work.
Did you do anything the bishop asked you to do?
No.
And how often, Sister Mary Joan, do they say no? I mean,
More often than people think, and
Yeah.
it can be very frustrating.
It-
It's like going to the
I-
doctor, getting prescribed medication, and then deciding not to take it.
And then you wonder why it didn't work. I know. I get that every day
Exactly.
too. I
Yes, ma'am.
I work again. I do work very elementally, like shamans, like Native Americans, like Peruvians, like pagans, like Wicca. I work with the elements, and sometimes they get to the basics, like your air element. That's breath. That's thought process. The water element. That's your emotions. When I say, okay, just go run your hands underwater and release that. Did you do that? No. Okay, that was really hard. Go run your hands underwater. So yeah, some people, they get stuck. We know that they get stuck. They're not happy, but they're comfortable there. Or they're so afraid of the change, even if the change is going to be better. So that's why you've got to work with the mind part of it as well.
it is so important, and I mean, the ancients understood this, and that's what's really kind of amusing to those of us, that have studied the occult on a professional level, not, in the New Age casual
Yeah.
way, where people go to the bookstore and they read a few books by Lou Ellen and, declare themselves armchair experts. Those of us who have studied, the real stuff and worked with people that were very skilled practitioners know, that the ancients understood that mind and spirit were intimately connected to the point that the ancients didn't really distinguish the difference between them. That the whole thing that we call psychology today, and why even today it struggles to be recognized as a legitimate science or a legitimate medical science, is because there's no way to really rationalize it in the objective sense like they do with traditional medicine, where, you have cancer. Okay, well, there's certain treatments that we know will, work for certain types of cancers, and you go through those treatments, you take those medications, and, hope to God that it works out. But, when a person has depression or anxiety, which are usually, the first signs of a mental disorder, which can also, which makes it very confusing, be the first signs to a spiritual problem or a spiritual disorder. And, a lot of people ask me, the biggest question I get asked as an exorcist is, do people, when a person comes to you, how do you know whether or not it's mental illness or a attachment or like a demonic affliction of some kind, whether it be an obsession, an oppression, or even a possession? How do you know? And
Well, yeah.
what would you say?
Go on.
Because my answer to that is is there a difference? I mean, ultimately, when you're breaking it down, is it really different? Because there's always going to be one that plays on the other. You're not going to have a demonic event without there being psychological consequences, and psychological consequences can often bring in the darkness. So it's more about causation for me. When I'm trying to discern a problem, I'm trying to figure out, well, what's the cause, because that's what we need to use to fight the problem. But I'm curious, in your work, Patti, how does that correlate?
That very similar to yours too, because again, I sit and talk to them, and I'm listening to spirit. I'm looking at their energy, because that's that thing I see. I see the energy. I see where there's blockages within them. I'm looking to their heart. I'm looking to their spirit. And we actually talked a little bit, and the same thing with you. It's the spirit, the attachments will cause the mental thing causes the spirit's attachment. The worst things to me are, drug and alcohol abuse. I mean, real abuse, not just I have a drink.
Right.
That's the stuff that will really call in the dark stuff, and it's you just kind of feel it out working with them. It's literally leaving it up to spirit, and like, okay. So even again on the way I work with them, I'm not an exorcist. I don't do what you do. I don't have that. But it's like, okay, we're going to clear this. And I actually even try to work wording-wise in a way that they will understand, because of my old theatrical background, you have to talk to your audience. You know, if you're talking about one thing to 7-year-olds, you're going to talk different to them to, PhDs. You're going to talk different to something, same subject. So if I know somebody's deeply religious, I won't pretend that I have that same religion of them, but I will try to speak to their listening so they can understand it, because they need to understand it so they can change your perception, because perception is a big part of it, and even getting rid of the real dark energies and things.
Well, so much of what I encounter really is what I call in my work. I've created a model for the work that we do now in the Order of Exorcists, where we, have 4 classifications of demons. I've talked about them a lot on this show. The first, of course, is what we would consider to be the fallen angel in Judeo-Christian theology, and that's kind of the traditional understanding of what would cause a demonic possession in the classic sense. But that's the rarest. That's the one that almost never happens. The more common would be the second class, which is elementals, and they're really only called demons because of the negative association of the problems that they can cause, but not all elementals are aligned that way. Some of them are actually very beneficial. So it depends on which type of elemental you're interacting with, and, just because you're having a negative reaction doesn't mean they're malevolent. It just means that you're not compatible energy-wise. So that's another one. And then, the wrathful spirits, which we've talked about, those that have passed on, that maintain the negativity in which they died, or if they committed a lot of acts of evil, that can sometimes continue on in death. But the third classification is the one we see the most, which is what you call created. And this is where you get into the things of like egregores and thought forms, tulpas, where people have an issue, whether it be a type of a type of psychological problem, a trauma perhaps, and instead of dealing with the trauma, they either internalize it to the point that when it gets out, it can be projected out through the power of one's own psyche in such a way that it becomes a living entity. The abuse becomes an entity that continues the torment of the individual, and it behaves just like what would be a classic demonic attachment. Only the difference is, this isn't a fallen angel. This isn't Satan sitting on your shoulder trying to wreck you. This is your own trauma being projected out through the own power of the psyche, and then it is manifesting itself in an intelligent and sentient way. And I would imagine in your work, you encounter this a lot as well. Do you not?
Yes. Yes, yeah. Completely. Somebody told me 1,000,000 years ago, they were joking but not joking, just to give you a story. They go, the best curse you could put on someone is to tell them you're going to curse them and walk away. I have never cursed anyone. I never would curse anyone because, again, I believe what you put out, you come back, and I wouldn't. But what they meant was like, I'm going to put a curse on you. You walk away. You never think about them again. That person's going to go create their own curse. Period. It's exactly what you're saying. It's going into egregore. It's going into all this stuff. So that's why, you have to work with their thought patterns as well, because that's where these are formed often within that trauma. And I also want to say that when I say I work elementally, I work with the elements, not to me, a spirit is a spirit. It's a way of being. It doesn't mean I'm putting little spirits into people when I say wash your hands under water, the spirit of water. I'm not working with all elemental beings, but the spirit of nature, the strength of a tree with roots that go deep into the earth and the branches that hit the sky, the spirit of air with thought form, clarity, focus, the spirit of earth with that grounding sense, fire with that passion and creativity. So these aren't all spirits, they're a way of being in my spell working and in the way I work. The spirit that's created is the spirit that's created, but not literally like I'm sticking little elemental creatures into things.
Right. I think, again, it comes down to so much in religion. The problems, I think, of religion and spirituality come down to semantics. When you really take away the semantics, you find out that all that's left is the perennial truth that almost anyone who's a spiritual person can agree on. It's when you start to put human vocabulary and language and interpretation into the mix, that's when we start to get into trouble and holy wars and everything else.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So, they go back to those people who don't use words, they use sound, so you can understand them, or a lot of Heka or Egyptian or just doing the sound, because you're going to get just as much as the sound, and that will create it as, because the word, because like you said, demon means something to one person, means something to somebody else, means something to anybody else. We all have our own meaning of things.
Right, and even the very origination of the word demon had nothing really to do with fallen angels or anything like that. They really were just spirits, and not necessarily evil either. What we would probably use today would be the word elementals in the occult sense, not in the sense that you're using it, which is where you're talking about dealing with the spirits of the four elements, which is different than elements. But even the elementals are aligned to one of those four elements, as you know. And
yes.
So they create families, I guess, of spirits. But I'm curious. We're talking about how powerful the mind is and how it has the ability to project out its own darkness from within. And I tell people all the time, they always ask me, why aren't Ouija boards banned? Why aren't they? They're so dangerous. They're so evil. Why would people even buy one? Why does they sell it in toy stores? I hear this all the time, and I'm kind of like, well, if you really want to get serious about this, you're carrying a Ouija board around with you everywhere you go. It's called your brain. Your brain is more capable than any piece of wood is on its best day of bringing in or opening up a portal that could bring spirits down into your reality. It's just a matter of how we look at our existence and what kind of intentions we put out there. And if you have a lot of mental issues that you're dealing with, a lot of trauma you're dealing with, well, then you're projecting out a lot of negativity, which is opening up portals. But you work with the Ouija board in a very positive way. So I would like, again, for the benefit of my audience who asks me this question often, and, I have many Ouija boards here, and I don't have a problem with them. They have never brought anything negative into my life, although I've had some very strange and somewhat disturbing experiences with them in the early days of studying them. But I was, doing things that I probably should not have been doing at that time. But we've talked about it on the show before, but, for the benefit of this audience who, is deathly afraid of Ouija boards, how can you maybe help them to understand a positive practical use for them?
Okay. Yes, I can. I have actually, I've got dozens too. I have the exact two I had when I was a little kid, the same exact one. I actually don't think they should be sold at toy stores. I think they should have a complete different set of instructions. They should be adults, and this is not a toy. I mean, in reality, it's a piece of cardboard or it's a piece of plywood, whatever, numbers and letters on it, yes. And it's a portal. It can be a portal. So I think the instructions need to say something, not it's a toy, whatever, but just be careful. Number one, know your belief system. Know who you're going to call when things get weird. Set up warding, whether that's your angels, whether that's the Christ light, whether that's your spirit guide, whatever words. So work your warding, set up sacred space. And number two, be careful who you allow in. You don't open the front door of your home and say, everybody out there, come on in, hang out, do whatever you want. You would never do that at your home. Hang out with my kids a while. Why would you do that with a Ouija board? So if you're specifically waking up, okay, I am only allowing in good and light spirits. On my seance, I am only allowing good and light spirits that are part of the people here around this table, around this seance table. So I do these about once a month, tiny little public ones in my home. They are the sweetest, most magical. Everybody is talking to Grandma, Uncle Bob, the kid that lost in school. I've never had, well, I'll tell you when somebody burst into flames, but I'll explain that. That was at Marilyn Manson's house. But
well, there you go.
But we were wanting to see what the spirit was, and it still wasn't demonic. It was just a cranky spirit, and the guy was being disrespectful. And I say with anybody, be a skeptic, be okay, try to be open. If you're a skeptic, that's okay. But no matter what, be respectful, because this is real whether you believe it or not, and you have to be respectful. We're opening the veil here. So I've gotten everything working on a Ouija board from iPhone codes. This beautiful young guy died, he had an illness, leaving a young wife and young child, and there they sat with his iPhone. He did not know his code to get in. And there was pictures and videos. So literally, as I said, they could be very practical. I sat with them. We did the Ouija. We go, we just need the iPhone code, and we got it. They opened up the phone, and this was about the same time when, I don't know, a while back, Apple and the government was fighting over the government for some law case, a criminal case, wanted Apple to give them the code, and Apple wouldn't do it. They should have just used a Ouija board. So again, I work only in the light that is only allowed in. I firmly believe that this earthly realm is our realm of existence. That the darkness, unless we really do invite it in, or anger can invite it in, even fear can invite it in, and of course, like we said, addictions, abuse, and mental imbalance. This is our realm. We have control here. And unless you go over to the dark. So my seances, my Ouija boards are the sweetest. I'm working now. Oh, my friend Dan McBain's, he goes back to what they did, when these are invented. And my favorite thing is a chalkboard, Ouija board. It's got a planchette that you put your fingers on, just like the Ouija board, but it draws with chalk on a chalkboard.
Okay.
So, many spirits like it better because I think spelling seems to go out the window when on the other side. It's like what he's trying to say is that, really, it's phonetic. It's just phonetic. No, I've had things written in Hebrew before. I didn't know that, but it's like there's no vowels. It's all consonants. And somebody goes, oh, that's Hebrew. That's blah, blah, blah. But the chalkboard thing, I've had it just like 2 seances ago. We were talking to somebody's grandmother. She was a very devout Catholic. 4 or 5 people with their hands. It was going wild, round and round and round and round on this chalkboard. We couldn't see what it was going. It's pretty dark. We moved the chalkboard. It had drawn a perfect Virgin Mary, robes and all.
Oh, wow.
Absolute perfect Virgin Mary. And it was like, oh. And then, I'm not getting political, but a while back there was a White House correspondent had passed, a pretty well-famous White House correspondent had passed, and I was with a very famous AP, Associated Press reporter, and this had been her best friend. So her big question was, what's going on at the White House? So again, fingers moving, thing going around and round, circles. It looks like it's just gibberish. We moved a little planchette, and Spirit had drawn this perfect little rat. I'm not getting political. It was like I couldn't draw. I mean, I draw like a 5-year-old. This had perfect form, perfect shape, the little turned ears, the little tail going around. The chalkboard is brilliant, especially when so many people were artists in life and they would rather draw something.
Well,
and they can write with that too.
It seems to be more, that does seem to make sense since, most of this type of interaction is occurring at a right brain level. If we're going to get into sort of some of the psychology of it, you are sort of surrendering reason and objectivity in order to allow something to come through and perhaps even use your energy to be able to manipulate the planchette. So it makes sense to me on an occult level that a chalkboard would be easier for them to use than a set alphabet where it's rigid and very objective in its design. They can't deviate from it, and I can sometimes sense when I've used the board, in my previous research that I've talked about on the show in previous episodes, so I'm not going to relive it now. You can listen to those past ones if anybody's interested in them. But what I've noticed is there's a great deal of frustration a lot of times with spirits communicating through the Ouija board because they're not able to always manipulate like you said, spelling seems to go out the window. I'm sometimes wondering if is it that they don't remember, or has it more to do with the fact that the amount of energy that's needed to hit these precise points is much more difficult than it would be if they just give them a clean slate and they can do anything they want with it.
I think it also has to. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it also has to do with like the way I can't process text speak, like the way people do all these abbreviations to be able to text faster. I can't do that. And I get frustrated sometimes having to peck out like full sentences with, one finger, one letter at a time. It's probably a similar type of mental disconnect. It's hard to be able, when you're thinking of something and having to apply it not only in a different medium but with different language, it's probably very frustrating.
Well, just like EVP, you go into a very active location, and EVP is almost always easy to get in such a location, but the Ovilus is a hit or miss. Sometimes it really works and connects, and sometimes it's not. I kind of liken the Ovilus to being more like a Ouija board, where it's a set, very objective set of rules that the spirit using it needs to follow. And if they don't understand that, or if they don't have enough energy in order to work with it, then it kind of goes out the window, and all you get is a bunch of gibberish and random responses, whereas EVP is more natural and gives them less rules to work with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I think you nailed it on the head, the right brain, left brain thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think, our left brain, the way I look at it, my degree's in psychology, so, I don't actually have a degree in theology. I did not go into life expecting to be a priest. That was sort of something that I kind of, was forced into by the powers that be, out there, kind of leading me into this direction and not letting me say no. But I had it in my mind to either teach university or to even be a work in a facility, which I did for a period of time. But I've always I try to be very rational about the paranormal and try to integrate my knowledge in psychology with what we understand in this up and coming field of paranormal research that we have now gotten so far involved in through this work. And I can tell you, the left brain or the left hemisphere where all of our objective reasoning is calculated, struggles with being able to surrender control just long enough to be able to make contact with some spiritual reality that's all around us. It's not like you have to go to really active locations. I mean, if you really try hard enough, I guarantee you, if you make the right connections, you can connect to any spirit anywhere you are, anywhere in the world. It does not matter if the place is haunted or not. It just haunted is going to be more energy to work with, but so that I guess people find it easier. But overall, you can make these connections in your home. Sister Mary Joan, for example, will not use any of our paranormal equipment in her home because she knows of this. She knows that she doesn't want to make it more active than it already might be. But, the right brain, is where we are able to be more creative and is more spiritually centered and more spiritually connected. And it's very clear, people that are very naturally inclined towards the mystical arts tend to also be very good in the actual fine arts, producing actual physical works, as well as being able to connect on a spiritual level. In a lot of cases, some of the best artists are gaining their inspiration from some type of spirituality that they don't even understand, some dimension of information that they're able to tap into that they have to completely suspend objective reason to connect with. So, as a witch, somebody that practices mysticism by virtue of your own religious and spiritual path, how do you, I'm assuming you use meditation quite often so that you can suspend those left brain, objective reasoning that gets in the way, right?
Yes, I do, and I do talk left brain, right brain stuff a lot because I'll get witchy on it instead of the psychological. We cross the broom. It's called being a hedge witch. I will literally lay my besom, my witch's broom, on the floor. On this side of the thing, this is my world of reason. This is where you pay rent, you do this, your car payments, and all those things. On the other side of the broom, that is the world of magic, or of the other realms, of the spiritual world. And I'm going to let go of the world of reason now. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be logical, because I'm leaving that on the other side of the broom. So it's literally like, Richard, you kind of just step over it. Now I'm in this world. And that's a really good way for people to train their own gift. So it just letting it go. So I do. I mean, years and years meditation and working and breathing exercises. Now I'm pretty good at being able to just kind of cross the broom and go right into it. But I have to really consciously. It's a dance, because I need to shut down. I can't sit there worrying about what are they going to say. This doesn't make sense. If this comes out of my head, then I'm nothing. There's no psychics attached. There's no mediumship attached. I'm just thinking brain. I've got to make sure that there's something there that, if the building light's on fire, I'm going to notice it. Right. or when I let somebody channel through, but basically let go of that whole sense. So, and I do believe regular artists, whether it's fine artists, whether it's dance arts, whether it's actors who really go there, they do go completely beyond the space. They let go of what it's supposed to be, or the reason, or how, or the lines were, or the sun's supposed to be this yellow color. When they really go there, they're going.
Right. And I think that's why a lot of people, particularly as children, although I never suffered from this, and I'm guessing you probably didn't either, fear the dark, or don't like being in their bed at night, or worried, these sort of childhood mythos of the monster being in the closet or underneath the bed. I really think that stems from the fact that when we are falling asleep, those left brain fail-safes are being suspended, which opens us up naturally to experience more of the larger spiritual reality that's all around us. And that can be, when you're not prepared for it, particularly if you're young and don't understand it, a little bit terrifying. However, though, some of us are just kind of born into it, and it becomes second nature, and we never really knew anything different. In fact, I really had so many experiences growing up of a paranormal nature that I thought that was normal. I would talk about it as though, everybody... Of course, everybody experiences this. This is what normal life is. And they did not, people thought I was really from another planet because they really did not understand what I was saying, particularly adults, but even my peers who were definitely less connected than I was spiritually didn't understand it. And it took me a long time to grow up and realize that, oh my goodness, that's a sensitivity that I have that obviously these people do not. And I had to temper how much I talked about it so that it didn't become such an obstacle to making friendships or being accepted by peers. But in my early years, I thought everyone had this, and I thought it was just completely natural. So I never feared the dark. I wasn't afraid of things in my closet or anything like that. Encountering spirits as I was falling asleep, being more susceptible to it, completely natural, felt very comforting actually. And I think that really led into this work, which people ask me all the time. I'm sure they do you too, Patti. Are you afraid going into these situations? Like, why would I be afraid? I mean, there's work to do. You go in, you get it done. I'm going to be just fine either way. And it has to do with where you're at, and how you have, I would say, control of your own faculties, your own spiritual faculties. And maybe it is growing up with it, like you said. Somebody was asking in the chat room, this is kind of a good lead in to mention this. Thania, I believe it was, asked you, Patti, since you were born with the gift, where can someone go to try to learn to control and understand the gift that they're born with? Because for me, it just was naturally developed. I never felt like I ever needed really help with it. I mean, sometimes it would be overwhelming. I had to learn to sort of turn it off, and the way I did that was by going to college and doing a lot of left brain stuff so that I could kind of balance back and forth and turn it off when it was intrusive and turn it back on when I wanted to use it. What about you, and how would you answer that question? First, talk about how you deal with it, and then how would you give advice to somebody who's in that situation as an adult?
Yes, very similar to you. I thought everybody had it. I was never afraid of the dark. I was never afraid of it. Again, I saw spirits. That's better. That's not so better. That's this. That's that. And again, I never thought I was giving up control or anything. That's just so I haven't. I'm not afraid going into things. Yes, I can get startled just like the next guy. It's like, whoa, you know. Yeah. But I have enough faith and I have enough training. I think it's like, this is what I do. I go in and it's safe. I do turn it off though. I think that's a must. Because so many people who are gifted like you, like I, and open to that spiritual world, they drive themselves nuts. How many healers are the sickest people you know? How many, empaths take on everybody, headache, pain, this and that. And that's, I don't believe what we're supposed to do. So I remember I guess it was the 80s, I was young. It's like I couldn't even keep in my body. How do I not astral travel? I started wearing hats going to keep in. It's like, no, I have to be here. I have to be now. I mean, somebody on the chat room said about where everybody's asleep. I was just out. So again, it's all techniques to learn, and I learned, and I totally shut it down unless there's a reason not to. I don't want to go to the grocery store and see everybody's dead relatives or spirits in the food aisle. I don't want to be Long Island medium. Your mother wants to talk to you. Number one, I don't think that's ethical because they haven't asked me, and it's not my. I don't, unless there's a real danger thing. I don't think it's ethical. Unless the spirit really beats me up. And number two, with her, I'm not saying anything bad about Long Island medium. I think she's great, and people know she's there because there's a whole film crew. As we know, TV. She's not sneaking into the grocery store, so that's not about her. But I shut it off. So I will go through my regular day. I'm going to the dry cleaners. I'm going to the grocery store. I'm taking my dog for a walk. I'm just normal as anybody else. Different when I go into meditation, different when I go into my spiritual place, different if I'm doing a clearing or a seance or just my one-on-one counseling with people. And I think for people, how to learn to develop theirs, again, go inside. I see there's a million correct methods. Your method is fabulous. My method is fabulous. And then there's a million other ones. Find your truth. I think that what we all need to do, what some belief systems have taken away from people, is use your own sense of virtue. Virtue. So, do your traditional Judeo-Christian, do more esoteric, do this or that to develop your gifts. Go look at everything. That's what I did. I was actually raised without any kind of religion. My parents knew what I did. Yeah, Grandma did that too. She saw dead people. But my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a pretty darn famous psychoanalyst, humanist, a very Freudian, leader of the atheist church here. So, and he was academic. He hung out literally with Isaac Asimov, Carl Sagan, Norman Lear, Steve Allen was his best friend. These very this is fact, and thinking anything spiritual was almost a dirty word or a weakness to my grandfather. If he saw, and we came from a whole mixed background. It would have been half Jewish, half Christian, half this. If he saw any of his grandchildren wearing a cross or a Star of David or an ankh, it was like, oh, how sad. So I grew up, I'd see the energy. I would drive by a church or a temple or a synagogue, and I'd see the energy, and I'd want to go in, but it was like, oh, that's those places we don't go. My parents really had never said anything, but it's just like, I don't. I think I was all the way up to age 13 when, it was in the late 70s when the Jesus people, all the cute Christian rock bands came in, and like there was a cute Christian
Striper.
Yeah, and I'm like, it took me. I was really brave to ask my mom if I could go to church with my girlfriend. I was so scared. I mean, I almost would have felt safer. Can I go to an orgy with my? Not really, but can I? yeah, you can do anything you want. I was like, I can do anything I want. There's no rule. No. So thus I became a seeker. I went there, and the born again, the evangelical. Okay, I like that, but what I don't like about that is because they say this is wrong and this is right and this is the only right way. And they said of that particular group, not any, but they said, it's a sin for me to go talk to a Buddhist about Buddhism. I have to talk to them about Buddhism. I go, that doesn't ring right. This one won't work. And then I would go study Buddhism, and then I'd go to my Judaism roots, and then I'd go to the New Age, and that's a little squeaky. So I became a seeker. But now I go back, and I know I've taken this completely off track. I go back and even read my grandfather's books. He writes on religion. He writes on spirituality. He writes on sexuality. He was great. He was wild. I go, oh my gosh, we have almost, even he, a humanist leader of the atheist church who writes on it, he goes almost to the same through lines too. He just used different words. He won't use the word God. He won't use the word spirit, but there's these same truths within it.
So what would you say God is to you? If you had to describe God from your worldview and your own personal experience, how would you define that particular term?
I use it, I'm pretty broad with it because I think it's just that high energy source. I will use the word God. I will use the word source, as New Agers do. I will use the word the universe. I do think there is that one big higher energy that kind of oversees. I do think that's within us, of course. We are all part of that. I don't necessarily think it's a big man in white robes. I don't think it's gender-based.
Yeah. The gender thing. Don't even get me started. We had a big discussion on that on Twitter,
really?
And it my goodness, I'm sure you follow it from time to time. How much trouble I get myself into answering these questions.
Yes, you do. I love that. I absolutely adore that. So anyway, what was your question again?
How would you define God? How would you define that?
Oh yeah, before that. Yeah, that is how, again, spirit, ultimate energy, highest source. I see, again, because I see energy, I see vibration. I see there's high vibration people and low vibration people. You can raise your vibration. Again, I get into things like virtue and integrity and stuff. And I think whatever people call God, source, universe, is the highest vibration.
Well, I tell people all the time, and Sister Maximilian in the chat room is talking about it a bit too. I was loosely raised Catholic. By loose, I mean we didn't go to church, but if people were to ask my family what they were, they would use the term, even though technically speaking, they really weren't because they didn't do anything with it. I mean, I was baptized as a baby, as any Catholic would be. But overall, maybe went to the monastery on Christmas morning a few times for Mass, but, not really anything more detailed than that. And then I was hit with this vocation around 17. But, I struggled a lot with it, and I kept running away from it. And one of the ways that I did that was to completely abandon Christianity altogether. And for 10 years, I became a Buddhist. And that's when I met my wife, Tracy, who's known now as Sister Maximilian, and she took on religious vows in the order. I tell people now, because after becoming a Buddhist for 10 years, still being hit with this vocation, still having this call to do what I now do, I tell people that Catholicism and Christianity did not make sense to me until I was a Buddhist. I needed that knowledge in order to be able to assimilate the Christian path, because like you, Patti, I was completely disgusted. It was not even a matter of it wasn't even just like, oh, well, this is just not for me. It was not a casual thing. I was repulsed to a very extreme degree by the Christian proclivity to be self-righteous and judgmental towards other paths. To this day, I have no tolerance for it, and I will definitely put my foot in my mouth anytime it comes up in Christian circles, because I will not tolerate that type of elitism, because that's how I see it. I see it as spiritual elitism, to say, we got the right way, everyone else is wrong. Even the Catechism of the Roman Catholic Church does not even say that. What it does, it still puts itself above and says, we've got the best path, but it says that every spirituality has a piece of the puzzle, so to speak, and should be respected out of virtue of that. It might be an imperfect way, but it's still a way. I take it even a step further and say there are many perfect ways, and you have to find what resonates with your own vibrational alignment. Now, that doesn't sound very Catholic or Christian, but it is the metaphysical truth, and I can't deny that. So for me, Buddhism gave validation to my Christianity. It allowed me to assimilate it and use it in a way that I feel is very effective. So, in the Nicolaitan Church, we welcome everybody. We have given communion to practicing witches. The only requirement we have is that they at least are or were baptized. But assuming that took place at some point in their life, and that's just kind of a sacramental requirement that I can't get around. But they're welcome to celebrate with it, and they have, and they do. And a lot of Christian pagans, the Christo-pagan groups, and as well as Christian witches, which does exist, believe it or not. I'm sure you know this, but
yes,
a lot of people.
Yes, it does. I know many Christian witches.
Yeah.
Yes.
They find comfort in the Nicolaitan Church because we do not condemn it. We will not condemn it. I refuse to ever stand in the way of a person's spiritual growth and path. That would be completely wrong, and that's immoral, in my opinion. So I completely get it when you say that, you tried all these different paths and you like certain things, but what you could not get beyond is what I call the spiritual elitism. I have no tolerance for it either.
Yeah, so that's why I agree 100%. That's why I don't even go, I'm this or that, or I'm Wiccan, I'm Alexandria, I'm Diana. I don't want those titles, because the same thing could happen within that, and does within the witchcraft community. So it's just, I'm a witch.
You're kind of like, you're kind of like me in a lot of ways. I think also, I don't like when people hear that, they find out I'm a bishop, and then they take on the archetypal connotations that come with that. And I try to remind them, look, bishop is what I does. A bishop is what I do, rather. It is not who I am. Okay? It is something that one does. That's what I was trying to say earlier. It's something that one does. It is not something that one becomes. It's not something that one is by virtue or nature. It's an office that you hold, and it's something that you carry out. Being a witch is the same exact thing, but it's not an identity.
Right.
It's an office. It's a spiritual office.
Yeah. And I agree. And somebody who's, somebody's going to be afraid to come to me, or not afraid, or just doesn't feel right, but will go to you. And somebody who's like, I'm not going about you, I don't come to me. And there's some person in the middle, and there's some person over there. That's what was needed. Yeah. But again, I think my biggest problem with some belief systems is, again, we were given free will. That God thing gave us free will. So, but they take away people's of figuring out what's right or wrong. And see, you let people figure out their own truths within things. So do I. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just because you're told this or that. I don't want to be a sheep, even though we're supposed to be the Lamb of God. We're supposed to. I don't want to be a sheep.
No,
I want to think for myself and make the right choice.
Well, there's
or sometimes
no way
the wrong choice.
There's no way to discover the truth, Patti, if you're restricted in any way. So you have to choose. I think religion is important. You have to have a path, and I think what that does is it gives you a foundation upon which to build your spiritual life, and it kind of keeps you from sort of, I guess, falling out of alignment. Because it's easy to do when you're faced with just this, with the spiritual reality of everything in the cosmos. It's overwhelming, and so it helps to have a formula to follow, so that there's a common language that you can use to discuss these things. There's practices that have ancient applications. They are known to work, and so those things in the Catholic Church, that we call them sacraments. In the path of, I guess, ancestral witchcraft, these go back much further even. Because these are folk traditions that have been handed down through generations within families, and there's special secrets that are associated with that. And then things that are kind of conveyed by the ancestors, I really feel. I think the reason that you sort of always knew in some sort of way, you always knew what these things were, even though you hadn't been instructed or taught, is because your ancestors were sharing this information and teaching you, even though, it wasn't an objective lesson.
Yes.
And, you know what I mean?
Yes, and I agree with you. I like you use the word formula. I always use the word roadmap.
Yeah.
It's a language, exactly what you said. So you have to have your language, your navigation, your roadmap, how you get in, how you get out, how you work, how you communicate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we are talking with Patti Negri, and we'll be back after a short little break here. Go get a glass of water, a cup of coffee, and then when we get back here, we'll be taking your questions. Don't go away.
I am able to keep pushing my limits and all the drive that I have. Well, I'm going the distance with you. I didn't know what I had till I knew what was missing, and everything that I dread. Well, I built a resistance with you. Catch me when I fall, and I'll keep you on the ground. You were gone, I wish you'd stay. I could look at you for days. Time was well spent, that's when I knew that I need to spend my life here with you. Fast lane, I understand that you've been broken too many times, but I'll be waiting to mend your wounds from all you've taken. But if we listen to each other and made our mistakes, then I can show you who I am, because I'm not the same. I'm better with you. I'm better with you.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna let it away. Tonight, we're gonna let it away. Tonight, we're gonna let it away. Just like the sunrise, we're gonna let it away.
back, everybody. Thank you for staying through the break. Hope you're enjoying the music and, more importantly, the show and our special guest, Patti Negri. On this second half, we'll take your questions, so go ahead. Start asking them in the chat room. Sister Maximilian and Sister Mary Joan are taking note, and we'll get to all of them that we can. And I've got more of my own. Go away. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening for this wonderful show with our wonderful guest, Patti Negri. And, I got to say, Patti, everybody, I'm sure, out there is wondering, what's the deal with the lady snake?
Well, it's. I guess that's exactly to show the good and the bad and the light and the dark. I mean, I'm sure actually that she's a fine and wonderful person. We actually are our social media friends and have really, really talked because I don't think we're supposed to. But I went and looked at her and she's fine. She's a mother. I think what I just gather from her is that she's just more willing to work on the dark side than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what she's brought in for.
She definitely struck me. I had Sister Mary Joan and I both had a good conversation with her after Ghost Adventures Live, where we finally got to communicate with her because she was kept isolated from the rest of us. I don't even think she was at our casino. But
no, they kept her somewhere else.
Yeah, they kept her somewhere else. I would say that my impression was that she's very gray, that she does a lot of good things from what I have seen and the interactions that I've had with her. I'm also friends on social media, the few conversations I've had. But yes, I think she's willing to work with some of those darker energies. And as you know, Zach likes that.
Yeah, I know. So it's good. And again, and to me, there's a message there: the light and the dark. She's willing and able to play that part because she's legit. The first episode I did with her the year before. I was locked in a little thing somewhere, and Zach's like, just tell me what's going on. So I was seeing Father Sebastian doing something here, and I was seeing Bloody Mary doing something there. Just kind of stream of consciousness. Again, I had to shut down the left brain because otherwise I'm just sounding like an idiot here. But then he took me. He goes, well, just come with me, and he, threw me in the room with this. She's this little, lovely, unassuming looking little English woman. It's like, what is this energy? What the? Oh my God! Hi, whoa, and it's like, okay, putting the little wards, the little guards. So it was, again, good witch, bad witch. But I honestly, I didn't know where she was getting that bad energy, what that was that she was conjuring in that cauldron. I did not know that was the serial killer Ed Gein's cauldron until I saw it on television. Yep. Nobody told me anything. That's what that was. I thought that was dark and she was holding and she wants to hit me with a shovel, and the energy being thrown at me is just, oh my, I've not used this. But, she was, not that it was coming from her. It was that Ed Gein. He's the guy from...
he's channeling.
The Chainsaw Massacre or Silence of the Lambs ever. Guys eat people. So she was pulling stuff out of there that I wouldn't go near with a 10-foot pole. So that was my only experience. And then this year, again, so Zach takes me down. There she is. The only thing that I thought was interesting, Zach he likes to dance with the devil, or whatever you want to call it. He likes to play with the dark. He's light. He certainly is, but he loves that because that's who he is. That's what he is. That's what the show is. But what I thought this episode, this 4-hour live, I did not like what she was putting out. There were these. Talk about elementals. They were these dark, mushy, almost animal-like things that I'd never quite seen before.
And Chris Fleming said he saw them too.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Yeah.
And I remember looking, we never know what we're getting into. As you know, we all do it. I'm walking down the hallways like, what are these things? I didn't even know where I was going yet. And I think it wasn't right in the fact that it wasn't like, oh, here's a big thing for Zach to face, or demon, or here's your monster. These were little things that were causing chaos and not helping the show.
And this is something
what she was releasing.
Right. And this is something that I really want to get across here now that we have the opportunity to discuss it, is even to this day, after, I don't know how many podcasts I have done, I don't know how many radio interviews I've done, I don't know how many websites I've got out there now, people still ask me if I'm an actor, or they accuse me of being an actor. Because they really do expect that even though it's a reality television show, they expect that it is still staged and scripted. And I really want to get across. And Patti will tell you all, because she has had, I think, as many episodes as I have at this point. Have you done
more?
6 or 7? How many have you done, Patti?
7 or 8, I think.
7 or 8. Yeah, I think I'm at 7. Although one of them hasn't aired yet.
We're tied. We're in a
we're
competition.
tied. I think we're tied. He gives equal opportunity.
Yeah, because some might were Deadly Possessions, which was the spin-off show.
Right.
But no, that one thing. This is I watched the show a long time, like before yours was on, and I'm like, this is sort of silly. Who are these macho guys in the tight t-shirts who like scream and run like little when it pin drops? But once I got there, I go, oh my God, it's just because they're 120% committed. This is all legit. And believe me, they tell me nothing. Zach, there is no cheating. There is no acting. Zach will keep you, like he did Lady Snake. He will keep you left in the van, sitting there in a room, sequestered. If it's a local LA thing, you give you an address, show up here, or pick you up there, or fly here, and you know nothing. He wants it all legit, in the moment, and real. So, there's no acting.
That's actually kind of frustrating when you come from a law enforcement background, an investigative background. You can ask the bishop. I'm always like, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And he's like, we don't know yet. And I'm like, I gotta know something, but. Yeah. That's exactly the way they operate. Patti is telling you exactly how it works.
I'll tell you, from my first episode, which was Exorcism in Erie, I can tell you I was told nothing. When the producers made contact, I even asked very basic questions like, is the family baptized? What's their religious background? Because that tells me what I can and cannot do. There's certain things I can do for the baptized that I can't do for the unbaptized. I mean, I can help everybody, but I need to know the formula that I'm going into it. And it was like a deer in headlights. They both, the producers, and they were like, well, not the producers, the managers, the production managers. They were looking like, well, I can't tell you too much. You'll have to ask Zach. In the beginning, Zach wasn't very forthcoming. Now for these more recent cases, I do get a little bit more information, but just the background. And then when we get there, everything happens organically. I'm not really prepared for much. I'm not ever told what to say. and most of the time completely in the dark as to what's going to happen. So you're hearing it from me. You're hearing it from Patti Negri.
Yeah, literally
the show's
and
real.
figuratively in the dark.
Yeah, the show. Well, it's real. I mean, it is real. What you see is what you get. And if you find that the GAC kind of overreacts or seems melodramatic, this is just their natural personalities. They are this excited to be doing this work. They are like little kids on Christmas Day in every case. They really are.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So it's like ultimate respect for them, because I know it's not all reality show TV is that. And but theirs is. It's legit. You know nothing.
Well, and there are reality shows
he will blindfold you. It's literally blindfold you.
Oh, yeah,
you don't see
it.
No.
I mean, you went into the museum that day. We never got inside. We were never called in. But you were in there, pitch dark, not knowing what was going to happen or what you were going to encounter when you went there. And I mean, we were outside with you just before you went in, and I mean, you knew nothing. You're like, I don't know what's going to happen when I get in there.
Yeah,
typical.
So it's legit, and I think that's why it's in its 10th year and 16th or 17th season or whatever that is. I don't know how the math works. 10 years, 17 seasons.
I think
TV has funny math.
It's kind of strange. I mean, I don't know if they've done like some half seasons or how that really broke down mathematically, but there's no question about it. If you love the show, if you hate the show's a successful show, and it's successful because Zach's formula works. And yes, there are reality shows that are scripted. I've been interviewed on a show that was help me, Sister Mary Joan, you probably know it. The pawn shop in Detroit. It's not Pawn Stars. That's the one in Las Vegas, but the other one.
That's in Vegas.
Yeah, the one.
Yeah, I know what you're. I don't. Yeah.
Was it? I can't remember. Was it Hardcore Pawn or something?
Hardcore Pawn. That's what it was. And that one, I mean, I was interviewed by one of the guys that was on that show. He has his own show in Detroit, and he'll even say that, they were kind of led and directed into, scenarios so that they would play out according to, what they wanted for the entertainment value. Ghost Adventures does not do that. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, Zach is too neurotic about making sure everything's authentic and everything is precisely organic. He does not want anything to come across as being. I mean, he just wants the effect of the unknown. That's number one. But the other part of it is the material's just that interesting. When you get into real, authentic paranormal investigation, believe me, you don't have to fake anything. If you're doing it right, you don't need to fake anything because things are going to happen. There's going to be fascination to it. And I know this in the chat room over there. Maybe we can talk a little bit about it, the equipment. Some, we're saying that, Patti Negri doesn't need to use the equipment because she's using her natural skills. And honestly, yes, when you do this work in the capacity that Patti Negri does, you really don't need the equipment. The equipment's there, I think, for validation for the purposes of the viewers so that they can see some other concrete way of kind of saying, well, I mean, like we were in this case. I can't talk about it too much because it hasn't aired yet. But one of the upcoming episodes that we were on, as soon as you went into the home, you could feel the energy in there, and there's no way to convey that to the audience.
Yeah.
You can't explain that feeling. It's kind of I mean, really, Billy Tolley says it the best. It's like walking through spider webs.
Spider webs. Yep.
Yeah. And I felt like it was almost like, not just the spider webs, but I felt like the spiders were crawling all over me in that place. It was a very strange kind of picking feeling, but it was like more of a curiosity. But, the thing is, you can't convey that on television. So, you can react to it in sort of Aaron's fashion, or, you can use equipment and try to get some concrete validation for it. But in your work, Patti, I'm curious because we do use in a limited way. We don't really do too much of it, much less today than we did in the earlier days of my ministry. But we still sometimes will collect EVPs or use the Ovilus or the SLS camera. Do you use any of that equipment in any of your work, or do you just do you?
Not in my like one-on-one counseling with people, but I do now. I actually, if I'm going to go do a clearing, I will actually bring like a not the EMF reader to make sure it's not just too much electricity in the space. I mean, I'm using it as a, it's like, wow, there's just too much electricity in here, which could cause spirit activity or mimic spirit activity. I'm more having dowsing rods in hands and my chime and my bell. But I love the equipment to validate things because until I see it on TV, I only know the part that I'm there as you are and what's what. But to get the validation from it is amazing when they have the thing that's talking in the other room that's saying what I'm saying, or when I'm in the middle of a seance and I'm doing weird little things with my fingers going, and they're like this. There's these little creatures going like this. And then they go into the next room on their lockdown, and it's doing exactly what I said on camera. It's like, yeah, that's what I was seeing. How weird. I've never been able to explain that before. So it's a really nice validation. And like you said, you can't explain the spider web or the heavy feeling or the changes here. We could say it's cold, but they can't feel that. But you could see it when it comes up, or the change in temperature meter, all that stuff. I like it.
I do too. I mean, my favorite's the SLS. I really thought that was going to be the biggest, I guess, not hoax, but I really didn't expect to get much of a effect from it, because I've read a lot about the Kinect technology and how it wasn't really designed to be used in this way, and that you can get false anomalies very easily. And so I understood all that going into it. But what really shocked me is certain cases that we've had. It provided such perfect validation to what was going on in the situation that it could not be denied. You couldn't look at it and say, "Oh, that's an anomaly," or that the things that were going on were amazing. I'll give you two examples. One was on Ghost Adventures, Terra and Fontana, which was not a very popular episode, and unfortunately, we were only brought in at the very end to sort of help the family and finish it up, but they didn't really focus on that part of it in the episode. So when we went in, we did our own investigation. I brought my SLS with me to work because we were only on a skeleton crew. And actually, Sister Mary, Joan, and I sort of concluded there by ourselves. But when we really got into the investigation for our purposes to try to identify the type of problem that the family was having so that we could do as much as we could for them while we were there, since we only had that one night to work with them, we brought out the SLS, and there was bleeding in the bathroom walls that just started occurring while we were there. That you don't see on the episode, and then we went Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I tested that with hydrogen peroxide, and it bubbled up, so it was definitely something organic. It wasn't like they painted the wall or something.
Right. It wasn't like wasn't like paint, because there was things in the house that did actually appear to be paint, but this was not.
Yeah.
And so we started, it was all this activity started happening in the bathroom. So we started doing an exorcism in there. I started off, and Sister Mary Joan was there, and I think Sister Mary Joan was holding the camera, and then we had the little boy, the older boy in the episode. He was holding my cell phone and shooting the SLS, because notoriously the SLS will freeze up when you catch an actual anomaly. So we've learned our lesson. We record the screen with a separate device so that we are sure to capture it. And you can see through the course of that exorcism, again, never made it to the episode, unfortunately, but you can see this massive, about 7 or 8 foot entity, standing on the toilet next to a smaller one, and as the exorcism is being performed, you can see it getting smaller and smaller, and then it just shrivels up and disappears. And we caught that through the rite of exorcism. It was remarkable.
Yeah, it was something.
Can I share the one that made us learn our lesson to record with the alternate device?
Well, let's talk about the salt, because Patti will definitely relate to this, because salt is also such an integral part of the craft. So talk about this one as well.
Okay, this is my favorite Sister Mary Joan story. Okay, so we had this was when we were doing client interviews in our home. And Sister Mary Joan was sitting on the couch next to the client, and the client was describing what she was feeling and experiencing. And we had the SLS, and she said that she was starting to feel something on her, I think it was her shoulder, and it popped up on the SLS. We could see the figure sitting on her shoulder, and all of a sudden Sister Mary Joan flashes her hand out and grabs thin air, but on the SLS you can see she's got it by the neck. And so we have it by the neck. Bishop gets the container of exercise salt, and
so that I can preface this for the audience's sake, who might not be familiar with this method. One of the ways you can trap an entity like this particular kind is to have a blessed or exercise salt. Black salt's actually the best to use, but in lieu of that, kosher salt that has been properly exercised works just as well usually. And you put it in a glass container, and what it does is it slowly will absorb these elementals. And so from there, that's what I was attempting to do, is to capture it in the jar of salt, seal it up, and then bring it outside for eradication. So go ahead.
So I'm guiding them on the SLS, and he's got the salt, and Sister Mary Joan's like, do I still have it? Do I still have it? Yes, you have it. You have it by the neck. Don't let go. And so he brings the salt in, and you can see the figure on the SLS start to elongate. It's being
sucked in like a vacuum. Yeah.
Yes, it's like a cartoon. You can see it getting sucked into, and it fights and it resists, and then it contracts, and then it gets sucked back, and then it contracts, and finally it disappears into the salt container. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, and the record function failed.
Yeah.
Do
you find that happens with you, Patti? Does your record function fail on the SLS when you capture something good?
Well, I don't have my own SLS. Again, I'm mostly old school. I have a couple EMF meters. I have a little Ovilus. But a friend of mine does, and we were doing a thing here. Actually, we were doing a seance, so we had lovely spirits here. But we had that, and there was a spirit dancing around on my table, on my seance table. So I go, and somebody else was watching. I go, raise your hands. And it did. Yeah. I mean, it really followed completely. Raise your hands, put your hands down. Raise your hands. I'm like, oh, my God, this is real time. This is real everything. And it froze up. She watched the whole thing. We saw it from maybe she did have part of a camera, but we wasn't able to save it on the real camera. I know they've taken it back, tried to fix it, but it must just be something that they do. But so, yes, I don't have an SLS camera. Only because I'm not technical, and I'm afraid I won't know how to use it.
Oh, it is one of the more technical pieces, but not so much because it's very complicated, but because the interface is cumbersome. I'm hoping that the second version that Bill is going to release soon, if he hasn't already, I'm not really sure. I haven't been keeping track of it, but I'm hoping that resolves some of those particular issues because. It seems like the little tablet fails often, and I don't know if it's just because the spiritual entities have learned how to manipulate it so that they don't get captured. I do know that most of the time these darker things prefer to stay in the shadows and do not want to be brought out into mass consciousness. So they do things like this to affect the equipment so you can't, again, to capture. And the same thing happens with the angelic realm. We've had issues with that as well. So it happens on both sides of the vibrational fence.
Yeah. No, I've noticed that too. Things like that is too perfect of timing for that to go on, go off, and work. So.
Sister Maximilian, have there been any questions that we might have missed that you might have caught?
Yes. Let's see. There was one really good one that was for Patti that said, how do you get in good terms with angel guides?
Well, I mean, there shouldn't be a bad term to get to. It's not like you got to go meet the guy in the corner. I think it's just it's open your heart, get to know them. Create your relationship just like you do with people. Is how I work with them.
It's about relationship, isn't it? It's all about relationship.
It's all about relationship. Whether it's your spirit guides or the angelic realm, which I kind of the same in the way I see them and my vision, but not exactly. But But no, I think it's just openness of heart and truth, and being willing and open to communicate. I don't know. You got a better way, Bishop?
Well, no, I think that hits it right on the head. And the same thing we would say of, the Christian worldview. The same thing we would say of Christ. It's it's about developing a relationship. I try to tell people all the time. They'll say, "I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious," and that's kind of like saying, "I've got a wife, but I don't need to come home every night because I've got other things better to be doing." Going to church, I kind of liken to, that's you're coming home to spend time with your spouse. And in the Christian theology, Jesus is sort of the spouse of the church. He's the bridegroom, we're the bride. And it's portrayed that way because it's trying to emphasize an intimate relationship, as intimate as a husband and wife. And if you never spend time with him, if you're only calling on the phone, I kind of, liken that to the people who just like pray on the fly. It's like calling home, but going to church is like coming home and spending time in an intimate way with your spouse. And that's kind of the theology. I know a lot of Christians even feel uncomfortable about that, but get over it because it's biblical. Read the Song of Songs. That's a very sexual book. And it's an allegory to Christ's love, God's love for the church. And so the same thing goes in other traditions. Buddhists have a temple, Jews have a temple, Muslims have a mosque. For witchcraft, it's either your home temple or nature. But it's necessary to develop that relationship by coming home in whatever capacity that is for your own path. And I can't emphasize that enough. What would you have to say about that, Patti? If you
I agree. I agree completely. You have to, again, it's your faith, it's your place. So, but I understand why they're saying it. I'm spiritual, not religious. It's because, again, all those things that we don't like, the connotation of the word religious, they don't really mean it, but they mean it's that political thing. I think, as a role, and I think Jesus was the best witch of all.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no question about that. He definitely performed amazing acts of volition.
Yeah.
He used his will to do amazing
and that's
things.
not said sacrilegiously. That is said with respect and love and belief,
Right. I get you. Somebody's asking about, let me see, where was that? It just went through.
The house cleansing?
Yeah, house cleansing.
Rachel asked.
What kind of incenses would you recommend for house cleansing?
I'll give you my sage story right now. Sage is great, but sage is harsh because everybody cleans with sage. Sage gets rid of everything, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
So much.
Neutralizer. Yep.
It's a neutralizer.
Neutralizing, and it almost creates a vacuum to me. If I sage my house, it's like you got rid of everything. It's to me, it's like dusting your whole house and then leaving the doors and windows open in a sandstorm. So if you do sage, I suggest doing it counterclockwise, star-wise, and then go back through, because get rid of everything. Yes, get rid of bad energy, but then go through clockwise with something sweet. Something holy is always good. A frankincense, a myrrh, a sandalwood, something angelic. I work with the archangels on that as well. So, and do that clockwise, what you're bringing in, sunwise. So I will use sage, but not as much as I'll use Palo Santo. I know they even sell Palo Santo, maybe sage too, at Zach's Museum. Palo Santo gets rid of the negative, but not the positive. Yeah. I work with, oh my gosh, I have 2 baskets. I've got 20, 30, 40 different herbs with it. Depending on what I'm doing, I work a lot with cascarilla powder, which is literally just eggshells. It's really cleansing because I don't want to use toxics when people have, anybody, but especially with there's dogs and there's kids, put a little bit of eggshell powder, it's really protective, just like salt is really protective. But wow, if it's really serious, I'll bring in some camphor and, different sulfur things like that to get rid of stuff. But as a rule, you don't need that.
Yeah, people will almost always run to sage, and I always tell people the only time that I recommend, I mean, you might have a different view on this, but the only time I recommend that a person uses sage is when you're moving into a new place that you've never been before, you've never lived before, and you don't know what's been there, you don't know who's inhabited that place before, even if it's a new house, you don't know what happened on that land and in the ancient history of the earth. You just don't know. So it's sometimes best to start again with a clean slate, clean out all the energy, good or bad, and then once you've done that, have the house blessed, but never do it again once you get it blessed, because it can remove. Like you said, it's harsh, it's abrasive. It will remove a blessing.
So, yeah, no, I agree with you. And again, I will occasionally use it because some things just really need to get everything out of there. But you just fill it back up with love, with light. Bring a candle through the room. Again, the sweet incense. Use a sensor. And your intent. Intent is everything. Go through your house on this. First, what I do is you walk through a house and feel what you do, whether you have the sight or not. Like, there's arguing here. Oh, there's something here. There's this or that. This mirror, there's two mirrors facing each other. That's a portal. Walk through. And then again, I do the counterclockwise, like clean. And then when I'm doing the clockwise intent, I stand at the front door and you state who's allowed in your front door, what only people you invite in, only goodness, lightness, people with respect for you, for your home. What gets to come in that window? Fresh air, light, health, inspiration. What is the emotions? What is the feelings you want in your living room, in your bedroom? Good sleep, intimacy with your partner, room by room, and now you're filling it back up, and there's not even room for the dark and the whatever and the confused and the chaotic to get back in. I even have people put colors in. We've got incense, we've got sounds, we've got herbs, we've got oils. I've got sprays. It's like we are filling it up so much with love, with light, in their kids' room. Okay, safety, feeling of safety, good study, good education. This is where they do the homework, and it's the opposite of that spider web thing when you walk into a place.
Yeah, I use my chanting drum. I'll go through the house with my Native American chanting drum and just get a good vibrational rhythm going and do a little chant. And it works wonders too.
It does. I use it a lot.
People are asking about, getting incense. I'm going to recommend for anybody who is looking for the highest quality incense that you can possibly buy as far as frankincense and myrrh are concerned is orthodoxincense.com. They have the high-grade Somalian incense. It's expensive. It's $25 for a half a pound. $8 for 1 ounce, but it's what we use in the church, and it's what I use for exorcisms. Yeah, very, very powerful stuff. I mean, of course, we add a blessing to the incense before we burn it. There are things that those in the more natural traditions can do as well. If you are practicing witchcraft, it can be blessed in the same exact way. And it can be used in a very powerful remedy to a lot of negativity and that type of thing. Much, much better than burning sage or just using that as your default, because sage should be a last resort type of thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I love this. Great minds think alike, all of us. Or it's just because we see that there's a truth to that. And sage just became the go-to.
It is.
And again, there is certainly uses for it, but it's just overused.
Yeah, overused, and unfortunately, it has a lot of side effects. I've had a lot of situations where people have used sage. They'll come to me after they have tried to take care of the situation themselves, and they'll say, "Well, I saged the place, and it got worse." It's like, yeah, of course it got worse, because now you cleared away whatever good things might have been in there, helping you to keep the balance, and now, if there's something that's attached to the ground or somewhere in close proximity, it's just going to come back in, and you didn't get rid of anything. You just got rid of everything that was maybe helping you. So, I always tell people, stay away from the sage. Make sure you get a professional assessment by someone that's experienced and knows. But that gets me to my next question, because I know that, you get asked this a lot. I've noticed on social media. I mean, I obviously get asked it a lot as well. if you have a spirit attachment, people ask me, is there a way I can't get down to you, Bishop? You're too far away. I don't have the money to come down to you. I don't have the money to bring you to me. Is there a way that I can do something to take care of this attachment? And there are ways. And, of course, it's different in the Judeo-Christian tradition as it would be in the tradition of the craft. But, how would you advise in a client that would ask you, Patti, I've got this attachment. I can't get you out to me. What can I do to take care of this?
Yes, I do that because you can't get everywhere, and you try to get everywhere. Yeah, I do think there is things that they can do. Again, I like people to work somewhat within their belief system and knowledge, so I try to find out what that is.
Yeah.
So you're Christian, pray, start there, and work with your angels, work with Christ, work with your guides. I do, again, because I work with nature stuff, I work with a whole lot of stuff. I mean, literally from energy work to get you in a white bath. Okay, in this bathtub, you're going to throw some salt for cleansing. You're going to throw some sugar. Yes, plain old kitchen sugar for sweetness. You're going to throw some milk. Yes, milk for nurturing. We're going to light a white candle. We're going to, or you are going to do this. So I like tangible things that at least get them started. And then I will give them ritual. I will give them prayers. I will give them things to do as much as I can. I like people when they get really independent and not. Certain things, obviously, you need the professional who knows what they're doing. But as much as people can do themselves, that makes me very happy. Not always true with attachments, as you know. So I don't know. How do you deal with it?
Well, I mean, again, as you probably already detected from my question, it's kind of an overgeneralized question because each particular situation is unique, and you never face the same type of situation exactly twice.
Right.
There's similarities. You have categories that you can use, like oppression, obsession, possession, demonic attachment, spirit attachment. You have these labels that you can use to kind of give people a direction when you talk about it. But overall, everybody's going to have a different experience with it. Everyone's working at a different level spiritually. Some are very cultivated, and it's not very hard to get them to use that cultivation to work against it. Others don't seem to have a clue as to what to do spiritually. They've never done anything spiritually, and now they have this problem. They don't. I mean, those tend to be the worst situations. So, what I tend to do when we can't help someone, and Sister Maximilian is usually the one that reaches out when there's people from out of the area, and we know that the church just does not have the budget to leave its jurisdiction. Not at this time. That could change, but right now we don't have it. So what we do is we tell them, look, well, do you go to church? We ask, and if they don't, we encourage them. Start going to church. Because most people come to us from the Christian tradition. Of course, we do get an unusually large number of Muslims that ask for help. Believe it or not, we get a lot. And I even get calls sporadically, at least a few a year, from Saudi Arabia. People that want my help out there, which is interesting, as I don't think of Ghost Adventures, airing out there, but maybe it does.
I don't know. I think it maybe does. I can't believe how many people I work with all over the world, including Saudi Arabia. A lot of Indian people, a lot of Arabic people. I think it's everywhere. I don't know.
There are some. Muslims tend to. There is a mystical side to Islam, and not everybody is equipped in Islam. Just like in Christianity, not everybody's equipped to deal with these types of problems, which is why you have in the Catholic Church a division for exorcists, and same thing in Islam. There are certain ones that are trained in techniques. Even in Judaism, there's rabbis that are trained in various techniques, although they're all a little bit different. And in Christianity, it's more about commanding the entity, taking control of the entity, and pushing them out. Whereas in Judaism, it's more like negotiation. It's almost like a business meeting. You sit down.
Yeah, I love that about Judaism.
Yeah,
actually.
it's so practical. Basically, it's like, they'll go to, which is basically what a Dybbuk is. It's kind of a wrathful spirit. It has possessing capabilities, or at least it can attach to an individual, and so you kind of negotiate with it. And you say, "Look, I will help you move on. You got to leave this family alone." And that's kind of what a lot, they have different ways of handling it. But we get called from all over, and sometimes but most of the time it's Christian. So if they're Christian, what we do is we tell them to find a church, preferably a Catholic church, because ritual's important. And Protestant churches, I will be the first one to say, I'm not bashing anybody, because a lot of the people I would say more than 80% of the people that come to us that are Christian are not Catholic. Most of them are from the Protestant or non-denominational segments, and so the problem with those is that they don't have ritual. And if they do, like the Lutherans, it's limited. It doesn't go back to the more ancient techniques that have been passed down from the church. And in any esoteric sense, this has been lost to modern Christianity, so they don't realize it, and they don't get it, and they don't want to get it. But what the Catholic Church now possesses are essentially what remains of the ancient immortality rites of ancient Egypt. Okay, so that's been passed into, by adoption, the Christian religion, which came about through a Gnostic exchange, first Hermetic Gnosticism, then Sethian Gnosticism into Valentinian Gnosticism, and then that got adopted into the Proto-Orthodox theologies. Now, there are going to be scholars that refute me on that, but I can assure you it's true. And if you trace it back, you'll find that there's more than enough evidence to support it. The fact of the matter is, those rituals are important. They're ancient. They go back thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
Protestant churches don't have that.
No, I know. That's why I say what you do and what I do are so much similar, as compared to the Protestant. We're very similar, yeah.
Yeah, well, because we go back to, I'll tell you right now.
It's ancient.
It's all ancient, yes. It goes back to the same essential source. It's just it branched off into two different directions. But there is a perennial truth that from which these two things stem from, and that's why when you really study witchcraft, and you get away from the fear, you get away from this nonsense that it's demonic or of the devil, and you study it honestly. You give it an honest study. Don't fear it, but learn about it. I'm talking to Christians now. You'll see it is just another language for the very same things that we believe in. Now, I know there's going to be those traditionalists out there. They're going to say, "See, look at that heretic! See, he's teaching these mistruths. He's a false prophet." Oh, I've heard it all.
I'm sure.
And
you just come from love.
Yeah, you see it on social media. They
just like Christ.
Yeah. Most people like me, but there's that little segment that hates me for what I do. Hates me for it.
Yeah. Well,
I like
that's
you.
What you're doing. I like you. I like you a lot. I like all three of you. And again, that just means you're doing good work. If if everybody loved us, we would be doing nothing.
Well, I got to tell you, Patty, I hope one of these days, if one of us gets our own show in the air, we'll have to work together, on a semi-regular basis, just because. Think of how powerful that would be to go in and have both of our sides working in the same capacity. There's
a show idea in itself, my friend. Yes.
Wouldn't that be?
Kick some evil ass.
Oh my gosh, a witch and a Catholic bishop working together. That is a show.
I love it. Oh my God, we come in together. Dum da da dum. The superheroes. Yeah. No, that's good. Yes, and I'm sure you have a show probably you're working on. I have shows that I'm working on, and yes, you would be right there on mine. Like I need a bishop now. Help you guys, Sister Mary. Soon. Come on. Yes.
I'm in.
We'll do it. Well,
okay.
We can have a spin-off show. We can still have our own shows and then have a mutual show. It happens. It can be on two shows.
It happens. Yeah. It happens.
Why not? Right.
It happens. Well, Bishop, we did have a couple of questions.
Yeah. Real quick.
Ahead,
we can
Patty.
maybe get to one or two.
Okay.
We had one person ask about the number 666. We kind of said that's not really the number of the beast, but I couldn't remember what the real one is. And then someone else asked about what are some good resources for studying Christian mysticism.
Okay, so for the first one on 666, the original number was actually 616.
That's right.
Scribe that transcribed the original text and changed it to 666 accidentally. And then the greater number of documents that eventually went into the Latin Vulgate were using the source that had the error. And so almost all Bibles now, all Bibles now, not almost, all of them now say 666, when the original number, the oldest documents that you can go back to, all say 616. So that just goes to show you that, we create our own evils. Okay, so the reason that people fear 66, look at Crowley. Okay, he was used the number 666 all the time. We know that there are the religious Satanists, those that actually worship the fallen angel entity, not the atheist type, but the spiritual type. They use 666, and it was just a scribal error. That's all it was.
So we've made it a real thing.
We made it a real thing.
That's just like put a curse on you, you put your own curse. Yeah,
exactly.
It's a number tulpa.
It's an egregore. It's actually a true egregore.
Yeah, an egregore.
Because it's in everybody's consciousness now. So that hopefully that answers that question. And then the second question was sources for Christian mysticism. There really aren't any good ones that are written about. Most of them are taught through word of mouth, through tradition. But the ones that I would suggest you do is start reading Gnosticism, because Gnosticism was really the core of Christian mysticism before it started being labeled as a heresy. You don't have. You can read these texts if you're a conventional Christian. You're uncomfortable with reading the non-canonical sources. The Nag Hammadi can be read in a scholarly way. There's a wonderful spiritual and philosophical wisdom in there. It doesn't matter if it's not authoritative on a theological level. It's got a lot of data in there that you can use. And you know what? When you read the Nag Hammadi, you will start to see the ancient connections between Christianity and what Patti Negri does in terms of ancestral witchcraft.
Exactly what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah. And Patti, I don't know if you've read the Nag Hammadi, but if you have any... Not completely. But I'll tell you, if you have any, apprehensions or worries or things about your past explorations in Christianity that you have never reconciled, the Nag Hammadi will help you do it. I can promise you that, because, once you read it, you see, well, you already know this, but you see the connections. And there was never any division. There really was never any polarity there. It was all just people creating these unnecessary categories and branching off into their own wild directions, unfortunately.
Bishop, I think you should give everybody a homework assignment tonight and have everybody read The Perfect Mind or Thunder.
Yes, okay. This is what you're going to do, okay? You guys go to, and you too, Patti, go to...
I'm doing my homework, yeah.
All right. Go to...
Good girl.
Go to the church's website, esotericcatholic.org, okay? You can also click on Nicolaian.org. It's on my Twitter. It's in my little profile there. Just click on the link. Either one takes you to the same place. And on there's going to be a big menu at the top of the page. Just click on the online library. Okay? When you get to the online library, you're going to see a bunch of options. Just click on the Gnostic scriptures. Okay? And then scroll through... let's see which one is it listed under here. Going all the way down. Why am I not seeing it? Why am I not seeing it? I know it's on here, but for some reason I'm not seeing it. But oh, there it is. It's under Codex 6, and it's the second document under Codex 6. And it's going to say the Thunder Perfect Mind. Read the Barnstone translation. I think it's a little bit better. You all read that tonight. It shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes. Powerful stuff. And that's Christian mysticism right there, and indistinguishable from neo-pagan, ancient pagan thought, as well as Hermetic and ancestral witchcraft. Same basic core. They were all united in one thought at one time. It only broke off probably because Judaism always saw itself as a step apart, and Christians kind of adopted the idea that, we're special people. Honestly, it really came down to the way the theology works. And I'm not dissing Jews, I'm not dissing Christians, but that is the cultural phenomenon of the Jews being God's chosen people that kind of got adopted into Christianity. And what that meant is we're kind of better than everybody else, and they started to believe it. And that's unfortunate because we lost so much cooperation.
No, I can't wait to read this. I'm so excited. I love learning. Everything, just keep learning. Learning is the best.
Oh, it is. I can't wait. Please text me after you read it, what you think about it.
I will. It will be tomorrow, not tonight, though. I do my homework tomorrow because I'm going out.
I understand.
It's only 9:00 here.
It is.
That's true.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. The night is young, Patty. The night is young.
It is.
Well, I just want to say it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. I know that we will have a revolt if I don't have you back on at some point in the future.
I would be honored. This was so fun. You guys are so amazing. So, yes, I would be honored to come back whenever you'll have me.
Oh, well, you are always welcome, but definitely we'll set another date sometime in the near future. And for all of you out there, I want to say thank you so much for listening tonight. Patti is a dear friend and a great colleague, and I look forward to working with her in a direct capacity at some point in the future. There's no question about that. And to to all of you, the fans, please, if you like this show, donate to it. The church pays for it out of donations, and that's what keeps it on the air. So if you really found value in what we share here, throw a little donation the church's way. It really helps us to keep the show going, and we'll do more shows, hopefully, as things settle down. Things are really hectic right now. But anyway, thank you so much. We'll be back probably later on, and we'll do another episode this month, I'm sure. Can't do weekly right now. Probably get back to it at some point, but I'm trying to do at least 2 a month. Anyway, thank you all. God bless and take care. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Patti. Thank you, Sister Maximilian. Thank you, Sister Mary Joan. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Love you, Patti. Take care.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mwah. Night-night.